Today is a beautiful day to unravel the latest scandalous developments shaking the very foundation of Los Angeles. Grab your favorite beverage and settle in, because the drama we are about to unpack is nothing short of explosive. Let's dive straight into the glamorous, treacherous world of high fashion and broken hearts. The crashing waves of the Pacific Ocean often provide a serene backdrop to the luxurious lives of the Los Angeles elite. But for Electra Forrester, the beach house has officially become the site of her ultimate emotional destruction. The visceral shock of witnessing her former best friend, Melissa Dillon, intimately entangled with the man she loved, Will Spencer, was a cataclysmic blow that shattered her reality. Electra stood there, paralyzed by a blinding cocktail of grief and fury, as the undeniable visual confirmation of Will's betrayal burned itself into her memory. This was no longer just a corporate dispute over stolen secrets or family loyalties. This was a profound, deeply personal violation that struck at the very core of her heart. The image of Melissa, the woman who had played the innocent, supportive friend, now claiming the Spencer heir, was the final, fatal strike to Electra's lingering hopes for a reconciliation. The psychological toll of this betrayal cannot be overstated. Electra had spent weeks wrestling with her conflicting emotions, torn between the strict mandates of the Forrester patriarchs and her undeniable, magnetic pull toward Will. She had demanded transparency, only to be met with corporate walls built by Katie Logan and Bill Spencer. Yet, in her mind, the ultimate deception was not about jewelry lines or stolen diamonds. It was the fact that Will had sought solace in the arms of another woman the moment their relationship fractured. Electra's grief rapidly mutated into a toxic, consuming rage. She was not merely a heartbroken young woman. She was a Forrester, raised in a legacy of pride, power, and fierce retaliation. The vulnerability she felt was immediately weaponized, transforming her agonizing pain into a desperate need to reclaim her power and inflict an equal measure of suffering upon the man who had humiliated her. Fleeing the suffocating atmosphere of the beach house, Electra sought sanctuary within the towering glass walls of Forrester Creations. The fashion empire, usually a place of immense professional pressure, now served as a fortress against the emotional wreckage she had just escaped. However, her erratic arrival did not go unnoticed. RJ Forrester, ever the opportunist, immediately recognized the shattered state of the woman he had been relentlessly pursuing. RJ had been meticulously waiting in the wings, orchestrating his corporate pitches and romantic gestures, fully aware that Will Spencer's volatile nature would eventually lead to his downfall. Seeing Electra's tear-stained face and feeling the radiant heat of her anger, RJ knew that his golden window of opportunity had finally opened. He was ready to strike, not with comfort, but with a calculated, life-altering proposition. RJ Forrester is no stranger to the art of manipulation, a trait he has arguably inherited from the complex romantic histories of his parents, Ridge and Brooke. He approached Electra not just as a supportive shoulder to cry on, but as a savior offering a permanent escape from the Spencer-induced chaos. He listened to her venomous recounting of Will and Melissa's beach house betrayal, feeding her anger with his own carefully crafted outrage. RJ expertly positioned himself as the antithesis of Will Spencer, portraying himself as loyal, stable, entirely devoted to her, and most importantly, a Forrester. He reminded her of the grand vision he had for her, pitching not only the youth demographic fashion line, but a shared future where she would reign supreme, untouchable by the likes of Will or Melissa. In a moment of sheer, unadulterated opportunism, RJ Forrester dropped to one knee right there in the executive office. The proposal was sudden, dramatic, and dripping with an underlying desperation to cement his victory. He offered her a stunning commitment, promising a life of unwavering devotion and absolute priority. RJ's words were sweet, framing their potential marriage as the ultimate triumph of true love over toxic drama. However, beneath the romantic veneer, his motives were glaringly transparent. This proposal was a strategic strike in the ongoing war between the Forresters and the Spencers. By placing a ring on Electra's finger, RJ was not just claiming a bride. He was planting a flag of victory, permanently locking Will Spencer out of the Forrester kingdom and securing his own dominance in the family hierarchy. For Electra, the proposal was a surreal, dizzying blur. In any rational state of mind, she would have recognized the sheer absurdity of accepting a marriage proposal mere hours after having her heart obliterated by another man. But Electra was not operating on logic. She was operating on pure, unfiltered spite. As she looked down at RJ, her mind was not filled with visions of a romantic future or a deep, abiding love for the man kneeling before her. Instead, her thoughts were consumed by the image of Will and Melissa. She envisioned the absolute devastation that would wash over Will's face when he learned that she had moved on so spectacularly and so permanently. In a fit of vengeful impulsivity, driven by a desperate desire to prove her indifference, Electra uttered a breathless, definitive yes. The immediate aftermath of her acceptance was a masterclass in psychological denial. Electra forced a radiant, triumphant smile, wrapping her arms around RJ and allowing herself to be swept up in the illusion of a fairy tale ending. She convinced herself that this hasty engagement was an act of empowerment, a definitive statement that she was unbreakable. By aligning herself with RJ, she was securing her professional future as the face of the new Forrester Youth line and her personal future as a cherished member of the dynasty. However, the foundation of this engagement was built entirely on the toxic ashes of her resentment. Electra was blindly walking into a lifelong commitment not to build a life with RJ, but to destroy the memory of Will Spencer. RJ's reaction to her acceptance was a chilling display of arrogant triumph. He held Electra close, but his eyes gleamed with a predatory satisfaction that had nothing to do with romance. He had won. He had successfully manipulated a vulnerable, heartbroken woman into a binding commitment, effectively neutralizing his greatest rival. RJ's gloating was palpable, a silent victory lap over the Spencer family. He had used Will's catastrophic mistakes to his absolute advantage, proving that in the ruthless game of Los Angeles high society, timing and emotional manipulation were the ultimate weapons. RJ did not care that Electra's heart was still bleeding for another man. He only cared that he possessed the prize. However, this hasty, spite-fueled engagement did not go unnoticed by the seasoned eyes of the Forrester patriarchs. Ridge Forrester, a man whose own romantic history is a legendary tapestry of impulsive marriages and bitter divorces, immediately sensed the perilous nature of this union. While Ridge harbors a deep-seated hatred for Will Spencer and the entire Spencer clan, his paternal instincts were triggered by the sheer velocity of RJ and Electra's announcement. Ridge has stood at the altar enough times to recognize the frantic, hollow energy of a rebound. He saw the manic glint in Electra's eyes and the smug, arrogant posture of his son, and a profound sense of dread washed over him. Ridge's concern is a fascinating display of hypocrisy mixed with genuine paternal wisdom. Having navigated 9 marriages and 8 divorces with Brooke Logan alone, Ridge is intimately familiar with the disastrous consequences of marrying for the wrong reasons. He pulled RJ aside, his voice laced with a stern, authoritative warning. Ridge confronted his son about the reality of the situation, pointing out that Electra was clearly in a state of deep emotional shock. He warned RJ that building a marriage on the foundation of a woman's fresh heartbreak and desire for revenge was a recipe for an inevitable, explosive disaster. Ridge, despite wanting Will out of the picture, recognized that rushing into a wedding would only set RJ up for a humiliating public failure when Electra eventually woke up from her vengeful haze. Despite Ridge's dire warnings, RJ remained stubbornly defiant, blinded by his own ego and the intoxicating thrill of his victory. He dismissed his father's concerns, arrogantly asserting that his love would be enough to heal Electra's wounds. RJ is convinced that once the ring is on her finger and the wedding plans are in motion, Electra will simply forget the intense, passionate connection she shared with Will. This dangerous delusion is setting the stage for a spectacular emotional collision. RJ is underestimating the enduring power of Electra's unresolved feelings, foolishly believing that a shiny piece of jewelry and a corporate promotion can erase the profound trauma of her recent betrayal. Meanwhile, the unresolved secrets of the beach house continue to loom over this fragile engagement like a dark, ominous storm cloud. The truth about Will and Melissa Dillon's night together is far more complex than the visual Electra witnessed. The nuances of Will's drunken despair, Melissa's calculated seduction, and the lingering, suffocating guilt Will feels have yet to be fully unpacked. Electra reacted to a snapshot of betrayal, completely shutting down any possibility of an explanation. The narrative surrounding that fateful night is entirely controlled by Melissa's manipulative bragging and Electra's blinded rage. When the full, unfiltered truth inevitably surfaces, it threatens to detonate the very premise of Electra's spiteful engagement. The corporate implications of this hasty proposal are equally catastrophic. RJ has strategically intertwined their romantic union with his ambitious pitch for the new Forrester youth demographic line. By making Electra his fiancée, he is attempting to solidify her position as the indispensable face of the brand, forcing Ridge's hand in greenlighting the expensive project despite the company's current financial instability following the Monaco disaster. Electra is unknowingly becoming a pawn in RJ's desperate bid for corporate power. If this marriage implodes, it will not only shatter their personal lives, but also bring a highly publicized, embarrassing scandal to the doorstep of Forrester Creations, a company already reeling from Hope Logan's shocking defection to the rival Logan brand. The impending reaction of Will Spencer is the ultimate ticking time bomb in this intricate web of deceit and revenge. Will is currently drowning in a sea of depression, manipulated by Melissa Dillon and haunted by the violent mistakes that cost him his relationship. However, the moment the news of Electra's engagement to his most hated rival reaches his ears, that depressive state will violently transform into a destructive, untamed fury. Will is not a man who will quietly accept defeat, especially when he realizes that RJ has capitalized on a moment of profound vulnerability to steal the woman he loves. The Spencer heir's reaction will undoubtedly ignite a new, terrifying chapter in the war between the two dynasties. As Electra Forrester plunges headfirst into planning a wedding built on a foundation of pure spite, she is blinding herself to the devastating reality of her choices. She is using RJ Forrester as a human shield against her own agonizing grief, completely unaware that she is locking herself into a loveless, manipulative trap. Ridge's warnings echo through the halls of Forrester Creations, a dark prophecy of the disaster to come. The glamorous facade of this sudden engagement cannot hide the toxic resentment simmering just beneath the surface. The question is not if this spiteful union will collapse, but rather how much collateral damage it will cause when the explosive truth finally shatters the illusion, leaving Electra to face the horrifying consequences of her impulsive, vengeful heart.